Warlord Grix'ton of the mighty Nexar Empire stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Devastator, watching through the massive viewport as his tractor beams dragged yet another pathetic human vessel into his cargo bay. The small transport ship looked like a tin can compared to his fleet of 12 battle cruisers, each one capable of reducing an entire planet to cosmic dust. "Another glorious victory for the Empire," he muttered, his forearms crossed in satisfaction, while his scaled hide gleamed under the bridge's harsh lighting. His subordinates knew better than to point out that capturing a defenseless cargo hauler hardly qualified as a victory worthy of song and legend. The transport vessel, designation Lucky Strike, had been fleeing the outer colonies when Grix'ton's advanced scouts detected it. Intelligence suggested these colonial transports often carried valuable human scientists and engineers, perfect specimens for the Empire's research facilities. Not that Grix'ton particularly cared about research. He preferred the more entertaining aspects of conquest. "Sir," reported Lieutenant Vashkul from the communication station, "the boarding party has secured 17 prisoners. The manifest indicates mostly civilian colonists, but there appears to be one individual of interest." Grix'ton's compound eyes glittered with amusement. "Oh, do tell." "Dr. Sarah Chen, listed as a systems analyst for the Colonial Development Authority. The boarding party reports she appears to be some sort of computer specialist." A rumbling laugh escaped from Grix'ton's throat, a sound that made several junior officers flinch involuntarily. Computer specialist? These soft-skinned humans and their primitive technology never ceased to amuse him. The Empire had conquered 47 star systems, each with civilizations far more advanced than humanity. Yet here these bipedal creatures were, still playing with their crude electronic toys. "Bring her to me," Grix'ton commanded, settling his massive bulk into his command throne. "I wish to see this computer specialist." 20 minutes later, the bridge doors hissed open, and 2 guards escorted a human female onto the bridge. Grix'ton studied her with the same interest a child might show toward an interesting insect. She was small, even by human standards, with dark hair pulled back in what humans called a ponytail. Her clothing was rumpled from the capture, and she kept her eyes downcast in what appeared to be fear or submission. "Perfect." "So," Grix'ton boomed, his voice echoing through the bridge, "you are the famous Dr. Sarah Chen, computer specialist of the mighty human colonies." The human looked up briefly, then quickly averted her gaze. Grix'ton's laughter shook the deck plating. "Agricultural reports." Oh, this was rich. Here he had expected at least some sort of military strategist or weapons designer, and instead he had captured someone who spent her days cataloging space vegetables. "Agricultural reports," he repeated, wiping moisture from his eyes with one of his secondary hands. "Commander Zeklar, did you hear that? Our prisoner maintains databases for farming information." His second-in-command, a scarred veteran of 30 campaigns, stepped forward with obvious reluctance. "Sir, perhaps we should process her with the other prisoners and prepare them for transport to the research stations." "Nonsense." Grix'ton waved dismissively. "Look at her, Zeklar. She's terrified, harmless, probably never seen real violence in her entire soft little life. I think I'll keep this one as a pet." Several officers exchanged glances. Grix'ton's pets rarely survived long, and never pleasantly. "Sir," Zeklar ventured carefully, "keeping prisoners aboard during active combat operations violates several military protocols." Grix'ton's mood shifted slightly, his voice taking on a dangerous edge. "Are you questioning my judgment, Commander?" "Of course not, sir. I merely suggest that humans, despite their apparent weakness, have proven resourceful in the past." "Resourceful?" Grix'ton snorted. "This creature maintains agricultural databases, Zeklar. I've seen combat drones with more tactical capability." He gestured towards Sarah, who was doing an excellent job of looking small and frightened. "Besides, it might be entertaining to study human behavior up close. Consider it research for the Empire." Sarah Chen kept her expression carefully neutral, though internally she was already cataloging everything she observed. The bridge layout, the communication systems, the obvious hierarchy among the alien crew members, and most importantly, the complete and utter arrogance radiating from their commander. "Very well," Grix'ton announced, rising from his throne. "Dr. Sarah Chen, you are now my personal guest aboard the Devastator. You will be provided with comfortable quarters, adequate nutrition, and even access to some of our recreational computer systems. Consider yourself fortunate that I am in a generous mood." As the guards prepared to escort her away, Grix'ton called out one final comment that would in retrospect prove to be spectacularly ironic. "Do try not to break anything, little human. Our technology might be a bit too advanced for someone who catalogues vegetable reports." Chen nodded meekly and allowed herself to be led away, while behind her, Warlord Grix'ton settled back into his command throne, completely satisfied with his decision to acquire such a harmless and entertaining new pet. If he had bothered to research human military records, he might have discovered that Dr. Chen had spent 8 years as a cyber warfare specialist for the Colonial Defense Force before retiring to civilian work. But research was for cautious commanders, and Grix'ton had never been accused of being cautious. Commander Zeklar followed the guards escorting the human prisoner through the corridors of the Devastator, his unease growing with each step. In his 30 years of military service, he had learned to trust his instincts, and right now, those instincts were screaming warnings that his commanding officer was making a catastrophic mistake. The quarters Grix'ton had designated for his new pet were located in the VIP section of the ship, normally reserved for diplomatic prisoners or high-value intelligence assets. The irony was not lost on Zeklar that they were treating a supposed agricultural database administrator better than most captured enemy commanders. "Here we are, Dr. Chen," announced Guard Captain Moradek as he activated the door panel. "Your new accommodations courtesy of Warlord Grix'ton's generosity." Sarah stepped inside and stopped, her eyes widening in what appeared to be amazement. The quarters were indeed luxurious by any standard. A spacious living area with comfortable seating, a private sleeping chamber, a fully equipped refresher unit, and most significantly, a complete entertainment and communication console built into the far wall. This is incredible," she whispered, her voice carrying just the right note of overwhelmed gratitude. "I've never seen anything so advanced." Zeklar watched her carefully, noting how her gaze lingered on the computer terminal. Something about her reaction felt rehearsed, though he couldn't put his finger on exactly what bothered him. "The computer system has access to our recreational databases," Moradek explained with obvious pride. "Games, literature, historical records, even technical manuals for educational purposes. The Warlord wants you to be comfortable during your stay." "Educational purposes," Sarah repeated, moving closer to the terminal. "You mean I can actually learn about your technology?" "Within limits," Moradek chuckled. "Nothing classified, of course, but enough to keep a curious mind occupied." After the guards departed, Zeklar lingered in the doorway, studying the human. She had immediately settled at the computer console, her fingers hovering over the interface controls with what seemed like childlike wonder. "Tell me, Dr. Chen," he said quietly, "what exactly did your work involve back on the colonies?" Sarah looked up, her expression innocent and slightly confused. "Database maintenance, mostly. Agricultural yield reports, crop rotation schedules, soil composition analyses. Pretty boring stuff, really." She gestured at the alien computer system. "Nothing like this. Our colonial systems are so primitive compared to what you have here." Zeklar nodded slowly, but his doubts remained. There was something about the way she handled herself, a subtle confidence that seemed at odds with her supposed background. He made a mental note to research human agricultural systems later. An hour after settling the prisoner, Zeklar found himself in Warlord Grix'ton's private office, along with several other senior officers who shared his concerns. "Sir," began Chief Intelligence Officer Nalthek, "I must respectfully question the wisdom of providing any human with unrestricted computer access. Our files contain numerous reports of human cyber warfare capabilities." Grix'ton looked up from his tactical displays with obvious irritation. "Cyber warfare? This creature maintains crop reports, Nalthek. The most dangerous thing she has probably done with a computer is calculate fertilizer requirements." "Nevertheless, sir," pressed Security Chief Yargoth, "humans have demonstrated unexpected resourcefulness in previous encounters. Perhaps we should limit her system access to basic entertainment functions only." "Gentlemen," Grix'ton said, rising from his desk with theatrical patience, "you are missing the brilliance of my strategy. By giving this human access to our recreational systems, I am conducting an invaluable intelligence operation." The assembled officers exchanged puzzled glances. "Think about it," Grix'ton continued, clearly enjoying his moment of perceived genius. "She will spend hours exploring our databases, marveling at our superior technology, completely overwhelmed by capabilities she could never hope to understand. Meanwhile, I will be monitoring everything she does, learning how the human mind reacts to advanced systems. But Sir, Zeklar ventured, what if she attempts to access restricted areas of the network? Grix'ton's laughter filled the room. Commander, our security protocols were designed to contain civilizations far more advanced than humanity. If she somehow managed to bypass even our most basic safeguards, I would personally recommend her for a position in our intelligence division. The firewalls alone should be impenetrable to human understanding, added Chief Engineer Tormalik. Their computational methods are centuries behind ours. Exactly, Grix'ton nodded approvingly. She will exhaust herself trying to comprehend systems that our children master in primary education. By the time we reach the core worlds, I will have a complete psychological profile of human cognitive limitations. The intelligence value alone justifies the minimal risk. Meanwhile, 3 decks below, Dr. Sarah Chen sat at her luxury computer terminal, her fingers dancing across the interface with practiced efficiency. To any observer, she appeared to be browsing recreational databases and educational materials with the enthusiasm of someone encountering advanced technology for the first time. What the observers could not see was the series of diagnostic routines she was running in background processes, quietly mapping the network architecture and identifying potential vulnerabilities in the system security. Her agricultural database work had been real enough, but it had been a cover for her actual specialty, penetration testing, and network security for colonial defense installations. Fascinating, she murmured to herself as she discovered yet another poorly secured pathway in the alien network. All this advanced technology, and they still make the same basic mistakes as first-year computer science students. She paused her exploration as she heard footsteps in the corridor outside, quickly switching to a harmless educational program about Nexar history. The last thing she wanted was to arouse suspicion before she had mapped enough of their systems to be truly useful. Back in his office, Warlord Grix'ton was concluding his briefing with supreme confidence. Trust me, gentlemen, this harmless little human will provide us with invaluable intelligence about her species, and the entertainment value of watching her fumble with our technology will be considerable. What could possibly go wrong? Commander Zeklar said nothing, but his expression suggested he could think of several things that might go wrong, none of them pleasant for the Nexar Empire. 3 days into her captivity, Sarah Chen found herself being escorted through the corridors of the Devastator once again, but this time as part of what Warlord Grix'ton apparently considered a grand tour. He had summoned her to the officers' mess hall during the evening meal, ostensibly to show off his prize to his fellow commanders. Gentlemen, Grix'ton announced as he entered the dining area with Sarah trailing behind like an obedient pet. I present Dr. Sarah Chen, humanity's finest agricultural database specialist. The assembled officers looked up from their meals with varying degrees of amusement and curiosity. Sarah kept her posture slightly hunched, eyes downcast, playing the part of the overwhelmed prisoner perfectly while her mind catalogued everything she observed. She doesn't look like much, commented Fleet Captain Vexmorth, poking at his food with obvious disinterest. Are you certain she's worth the resources we're expending on her comfort? Ah, but that is precisely the point, Grix'ton replied, guiding Sarah to stand beside his chair like a trophy. Look at her, gentlemen, barely reaches my shoulder, probably weighs less than my ceremonial armor, and her greatest achievement was organizing crop rotation schedules. She represents the absolute pinnacle of human technological capability. Sarah bit back the urge to correct him about her actual credentials, and instead let out a small, nervous laugh. I wouldn't say pinnacle, sir. I just... Data entry, repeated Admiral Colfax with obvious mockery. How wonderfully primitive. Tell me, little human, what do you think of our computer systems? They're incredible, Sarah breathed, allowing genuine awe to color her voice while carefully omitting that her awe was directed at the spectacular security failures she had been documenting. I've never seen anything so advanced. The processing speeds alone must be thousands of times faster than anything we have. Thousands? Laughed Chief Engineer Tormalik. Try millions, little creature. Our basic maintenance terminals have more computational power than your most advanced research facilities. What he did not mention, and what Sarah had discovered through careful observation, was that all of this incredible computational power was managed by automated systems so sophisticated that the aliens themselves barely understood their own security protocols. They had become entirely dependent on artificial intelligence to manage their networks, which created blind spots that a skilled human operator could exploit. "I don't suppose," Sarah said hesitantly, wringing her hands in apparent nervousness, "I could access some of the technical documentation. I mean, just to learn. I've always been curious about advanced systems." The officers burst into laughter. "She wants to study our technical manuals," wheezed Captain Moradeth. "What's next? Shall we give her access to our weapons targeting systems?" "Why not?" Grix'ton grinned, clearly enjoying the entertainment. "Dr. Chen, would you like to see how our plasma cannons operate?" Sarah's eyes widened in feigned excitement. "Could I? I mean, would that be safe?" "Safe?" Grix'ton's laughter echoed through the mess hall. "My dear little human, our weapons systems are so advanced that even our own junior officers require years of training to operate them effectively. You could stare at the technical specifications for a lifetime and never comprehend even the basic principles." "But I'd love to try," Sarah insisted, playing up her apparent naivety. "Maybe if I had access to more advanced computer terminals. The one in my quarters is wonderful, but sometimes the processing seems a bit slow for the complex databases I'd like to examine." "Slow?" repeated Chief Engineer Tormalik with amusement. "That terminal has enough processing power to run a small starship. If it seems slow, it's because your primitive human brain cannot keep up with the data flow." "Perhaps," Sarah said thoughtfully, "but if I could have access to something faster, maybe with multiple displays, I learn better when I can compare different information sources simultaneously." Grix'ton considered this request with the same indulgence a parent might show toward a child asking for a more colorful toy. "Very well, Dr. Chen. I shall have my engineers install additional terminals in your quarters. Consider it an investment in cross-species education. And perhaps," Sarah pressed gently, "access to some of the historical databases. I'd love to learn about your great military victories, your technological achievements. It might help me understand how advanced civilizations develop." "Historical databases," mused Admiral Colfax. "I see no harm in that. Let the creature read about our conquests. It might teach her species the futility of resistance." What none of them realized was that historical military databases often contained outdated but still functional access codes, network maps, and system architectures that could provide valuable insight into current operations. As the evening progressed, Sarah found herself fielding increasingly condescending questions about human technology and culture. Each query revealed more about alien assumptions and blind spots, information she filed away for future use. "Tell me," asked Fleet Captain Vexmorth, "how do your people handle data encryption?" Sarah looked blank. "Encryption?" "Protecting information from unauthorized access," he explained slowly, as if speaking to a child. "Oh, we use passwords," Sarah replied earnestly, "sometimes really long ones with numbers and letters." The officers erupted in fresh laughter. Their own encryption systems were quantum-based and theoretically unbreakable, but Sarah had already identified 3 separate vulnerabilities in their implementation that a determined human cryptographer could exploit. "Passwords," repeated Chief Engineer Tormalik, wiping tears from his compound eyes. "They use passwords, gentlemen. No quantum encryption, no biometric locks, no temporal variance keys, just passwords." "It works for us," Sarah said defensively, secretly amused by their ignorance of human cybersecurity advances. By the end of the evening, Grix'ton had authorized not only the additional computer terminals Sarah had requested, but also expanded database access, including technical manuals, historical archives, and even limited access to what he considered harmless operational systems, like environmental controls and recreational facilities management. "There you go, Dr. Chen," he announced magnanimously. "Enough computer access to satisfy even your primitive curiosity. Try not to break anything important." As Sarah was escorted back to her quarters, she reflected on the evening's success. In 3 hours of playing the role of an overwhelmed agricultural specialist, she had gained access to enough alien systems to potentially compromise their entire fleet. The aliens' greatest weakness was not their technology, but their absolute certainty of their own superiority. Commander Zeklar, who had remained quiet throughout the evening, watched her go with growing unease. Something about the humans' questions had seemed almost too perfectly naive, and her requests for expanded computer access struck him as suspiciously specific. But when he approached Grix'ton with his concerns, the warlord dismissed them with a wave of his hand. "Zeklar, you worry too much. She's a data entry clerk who wants to play with our computers. What harm could she possibly do?" Chen sat in her newly upgraded quarters, surrounded by 3 large display screens and a primary control terminal that would have been the envy of any human military installation. To any observer monitoring her activities, she appeared to be doing exactly what Grix'ton expected, browsing through entertainment databases and educational materials with the wide-eyed wonder of a primitive mind encountering superior technology. The reality was considerably different. Well, she murmured under her breath as she executed her 15th diagnostic probe of the morning. What do we have here? The alien network architecture was indeed impressive, a vast interconnected web of quantum processors and AI management systems that could handle computational loads beyond human imagination. The problem, from a security standpoint, was that the very sophistication of these systems had made their creators complacent. Sarah opened what appeared to be an educational program about Nexar military history, while simultaneously running a background process that mapped network pathways. The aliens' AI systems were so advanced that they handled most security decisions automatically, which meant the organic operators had lost touch with basic security principles. Ancient Earth saying, she whispered to herself, the more complex the system, the more ways it can fail. Her first major discovery came while exploring what the aliens considered a harmless recreational database. The entertainment systems were connected to the ship's central network through what appeared to be a maintenance backdoor, probably installed by technicians who wanted easy access for updates and repairs. The AI security protocols recognized the pathway as authorized maintenance access and ignored it completely. Brilliant, Sarah said, careful to keep her voice low. They built a superhighway into their own systems and forgot to put up any guardrails. She began to systematically map the network, using the entertainment system's maintenance access to probe deeper into the ship's infrastructure. What she found was almost embarrassing from a security perspective. The aliens had created incredibly sophisticated AI systems to manage their networks, but those same AI systems had been programmed with built-in exceptions and backdoors to allow for maintenance and updates. The irony was delicious. Their artificial intelligence was so advanced that it had convinced the aliens they no longer needed to understand their own security systems. The organic operators had become passengers in their own network, trusting their AI to handle all the complex decisions while they focused on what they considered more important matters, like conquest and glory. Let's see what else you've left unlocked, Sarah murmured, her fingers dancing across the interface as she probed deeper into the ship's systems. She discovered that the maintenance pathways didn't just connect to entertainment systems, they provided access to environmental controls, communication arrays, navigation systems, and even weapons platforms. Each system had been designed with maintenance access points that the AI recognized as legitimate, creating a web of interconnected vulnerabilities that a skilled operator could exploit. The aliens' greatest strength had become their greatest weakness. Their technology was so advanced that they had forgotten the fundamental rule of cybersecurity. Any system connected to a network is only as secure as its weakest access point. Sarah began mapping the entire fleet's network architecture, using the Devastator's communication array to probe the other 11 ships in Grix'ton's battle group. To her amazement, she discovered that all the ships were connected through a central command network designed to allow for coordinated fleet operations. They networked their entire fleet together, she breathed, barely able to contain her excitement. One access point, 12 ships. It's like they wanted someone to hack them. She established what she privately called her digital foothold in each ship's systems, carefully placing monitoring programs that would record network traffic and system configurations. To the AI security systems, these programs appeared to be routine diagnostic utilities, the kind of maintenance software that ran constantly in the background of any complex system. Meanwhile, 3 decks above in the security center, Commander Zeklar was reviewing the daily surveillance reports when something caught his attention. According to the monitoring logs, their human prisoner was spending an unusual amount of time accessing technical databases. "Computer," he said to the AI interface, "display detailed activity logs for prisoner designation, Human Alpha 1. The holographic display showed Sarah's computer usage over the past several days. While the majority of her activity appeared to be focused on entertainment and educational content, there were subtle patterns that bothered him. Her database queries were too systematic, too methodical for someone who was supposedly just browsing out of curiosity. Zeklar pulled up the specific technical manuals she had accessed. Quantum computing principles, network architecture theory, historical military communication protocols. For someone who claimed to specialize in agricultural databases, she was showing a remarkably broad interest in systems engineering. Computer, analyze query patterns for unusual characteristics. Analysis complete. Subject displays above-average comprehension of complex technical concepts. Query patterns suggest systematic rather than casual research methodology. Zeklar's compound eyes narrowed. He had served with intelligence officers before, and Sarah's behavior was starting to match profiles he had seen of enemy operatives conducting reconnaissance. He made his way to Grix'ton's command center, where he found the Warlord reviewing tactical displays for their upcoming assault on the Kepler colonies. "Sir, I need to discuss our human prisoner." Grix'ton looked up with mild annoyance. "What about her? Has she broken something?" "Not exactly, sir, but her computer usage patterns are concerning. She's accessing technical manuals far beyond what would be expected for casual curiosity." "Zeklar," Grix'ton said with exaggerated patience, "she's trying to understand technology that is centuries ahead of anything her species has developed. Of course she's accessing technical manuals. Where else would she learn about quantum processing or network architecture?" "But sir, the systematic nature of her queries suggests—" "It suggests she has a methodical mind," Grix'ton interrupted, "which is exactly what I would expect from someone who organized agricultural databases for a living. She approaches everything systematically, because that's how primitive minds cope with complexity." Zeklar tried a different approach. "Sir, what if she's not who she claims to be? What if she has more technical background than her records indicate?" Grix'ton's laughter echoed through the command center. "Commander, I personally interrogated her. She's exactly what she appears to be, a minor colonial bureaucrat who spent her days cataloging crop yields. The idea that she could pose any threat to our systems is absurd. Nevertheless, sir, I recommend limiting her network access to basic entertainment functions only." "Absolutely not," Grix'ton replied firmly. "My research into human psychology is proceeding perfectly. She's learning just enough to be amazed by our superiority, while remaining completely incapable of understanding how any of it actually works. I want to see how far her primitive mind can stretch before it snaps." As if to prove his point, a communication alert chimed, and Sarah's face appeared on the secondary display screen, looking appropriately confused and frustrated. "Warlord Grix'ton, I'm sorry to bother you, but I think I did something wrong with the computer. Some of the technical manuals are showing information that doesn't make sense to me. Could someone help me understand quantum entanglement principles?" Grix'ton turned to Zeklar with a smug expression. "You see? She's so far out of her depth that she doesn't even realize when she's reading theoretical physics. Commander, arrange for one of our junior engineers to give her a basic tutorial. I want her to have just enough knowledge to appreciate how hopelessly primitive her species really is." As the communication ended, Zeklar remained troubled. Something about Sarah's request had felt rehearsed, like she was asking questions she already knew the answers to. But Grix'ton had already dismissed his concerns and returned to his tactical planning. Back in her quarters, Sarah smiled as she terminated the communication link. Her request for help with quantum entanglement had served two purposes. It reinforced Grix'ton's perception of her as helplessly out of her depth, while also providing her with a legitimate reason to have extended conversations with alien technical personnel. Phase 1 complete, she whispered to herself as she returned to her systematic mapping of the fleet's network vulnerabilities. Time for Phase 2. By her 7th day aboard the Devastator, Sarah Chen had achieved something that would have been considered impossible by every military strategist in human space. She had gained administrative access to an entire alien battle fleet without anyone suspecting her true capabilities. The breakthrough had come during her 3rd tutoring session with junior engineer Kavlek, a young alien who had been assigned to answer her innocent questions about quantum entanglement. While explaining the theoretical principles behind their communication systems, he had inadvertently provided her with the final piece of information she needed to crack their encryption protocols. "So the quantum entanglement allows instantaneous communication across any distance," Sarah had said, playing her role of the fascinated primitive perfectly. "Exactly," Kavlek had replied with obvious pride. "The entangled particles maintain their connection regardless of spatial separation. When we alter the quantum state of one particle, its paired particle responds immediately, allowing us to transmit data faster than light itself." What he had not mentioned, but what Sarah had deduced from careful observation, was that the quantum keys used to encrypt these communications were generated using a predictable algorithm based on stellar positioning data. Once she identified the pattern, she could generate matching keys and intercept any message transmitted between the ships. Now, sitting in her luxurious prison quarters surrounded by her multiple display screens, Sarah was looking at real-time communications traffic between all 12 ships in Grix'ton's fleet. She had access to tactical plans, supply reports, personnel rosters, and most importantly, the command codes for every major system in the battle group. Well, she murmured to herself as she reviewed a particularly interesting file. This changes everything. The file contained the complete operational plan for the invasion of the Kepler colonies, including troop deployment schedules, target priorities, and estimated casualty projections. According to the aliens' calculations, they expected to overwhelm the human defenses within 72 hours, resulting in approximately 2 million civilian casualties and the complete subjugation of 12 inhabited worlds. Sarah stared at the numbers for a long moment, feeling the weight of responsibility settle on her shoulders. She was no longer just a prisoner trying to escape. She was potentially the only person who could prevent a massacre. "Time to stop being passive," she whispered, her fingers hovering over the control interface. Her first target was the fleet's communication array. Using her administrative access, she began installing what appeared to be routine maintenance subroutines throughout the network. These programs would remain dormant until activated, but once triggered, they would give her complete control over every network system in the fleet. The irony was that the aliens' own security protocols were helping her. Their AI systems recognized her programs as legitimate maintenance software and automatically propagated them throughout the network, essentially helping her install her own backdoors into their systems. Next, she turned her attention to the weapons systems. The aliens had designed their plasma cannons and missile launchers with centralized fire control systems that could be managed remotely during battle. Sarah carefully mapped these systems, identifying the specific protocols she would need to either disable the weapons or, if necessary, turn them against each other. The navigation systems proved equally vulnerable. The aliens relied on a centralized astrogation computer that calculated jump coordinates for the entire fleet simultaneously. Sarah realized she could potentially scatter the ships across dozens of star systems with a single command, or even send them into the heart of a star if she was feeling particularly vindictive. As she worked, Sarah began implementing her cover strategy. She started introducing subtle malfunctions throughout the ship, minor glitches that would provide a plausible explanation for any system irregularities that might be detected later. Environmental controls began experiencing temperature fluctuations in unused cargo bays. Food replicators occasionally produced meals that were slightly oversalted. Lighting systems in empty corridors would flicker intermittently. Each problem was minor enough to be attributed to normal wear and tear, but collectively they created an atmosphere of general technical unreliability that would mask her more serious intrusions. 3 decks above, Warlord Grix'ton was growing increasingly frustrated with what appeared to be a cascade of minor technical failures throughout his flagship. "What do you mean the plasma conduits are showing irregular resonance patterns?" he demanded of Chief Engineer Tormalik. "It's probably just normal fluctuations in the quantum field generators, sir," Tormalik replied nervously. "These systems are incredibly complex, and minor variations are to be expected." "Minor variations," Grix'ton repeated dangerously. "Commander, we are preparing for a major invasion operation. I cannot have my flagship developing minor variations at critical moments." "Sir, we've run complete diagnostics on all primary systems. Everything tests within normal parameters. These appear to be isolated incidents with non-critical systems." What Tormalik did not know was that Sarah had been careful to ensure her sabotage affected only systems that would not be immediately critical to ship operations. She needed time to complete her takeover before anyone realized what was happening. "Sir," reported Communications Officer Nalvex, "I'm receiving similar reports from the other ships in the fleet. Minor technical anomalies across multiple platforms." Grix'ton's compound eyes narrowed. "All ships? That seems like more than coincidence." "It could be related to our extended time in hyperspace," suggested Navigation Officer Koldesh. "Prolonged exposure to hyperspace radiation can cause unexpected interactions with quantum-based systems." Sarah, monitoring their communications from her quarters, had to suppress a laugh. The aliens were so dependent on their advanced technology that they were willing to blame cosmic radiation rather than consider the possibility that someone might be actively sabotaging their systems. "Run complete system diagnostics on all ships," Grix'ton ordered. "I want to know if we have a real problem, or if our equipment is just getting temperamental." This was exactly what Sarah had been hoping for. Fleet-wide diagnostic routines would provide perfect cover for her final infiltration programs. As the aliens spent the next several hours running comprehensive tests on their systems, her backdoor programs were spreading throughout the entire battle group, embedding themselves so deeply in the network architecture that they would be virtually undetectable. By the time the diagnostics were complete and the aliens had concluded that their systems were functioning normally, Sarah had achieved something unprecedented in interstellar warfare: complete administrative control over an enemy battle fleet. She sat back in her chair, looking at the status displays that showed green indicators for every major system in 12 warships. She could disable their engines, scramble their navigation, shut down their life support, override their weapons targeting, or even trigger their self-destruct sequences. "Phase 3, she whispered to herself. "Time to show them what happens when you underestimate a human." But first, she had one more performance to give. Sarah activated her communication link to the bridge, making sure to look appropriately confused and concerned. "Warlord Grix'ton, I'm sorry to bother you, but my computer screens have been showing some strange readings. Are you having technical problems? I hope I didn't break anything by accident." Grix'ton's response came back immediately, his voice carrying a note of weary patience. "No, Dr. Chen, you have not broken anything. We are experiencing minor technical difficulties that are completely unrelated to your activities. Please continue with your studies and do not concern yourself with ship operations." "Oh, thank goodness," Sarah replied with obvious relief. "I was worried that maybe I had accessed something I shouldn't have. I'll be more careful." As the communication link closed, Sarah allowed herself a satisfied smile. Grix'ton still saw her as nothing more than his harmless little pet, completely incapable of understanding the sophisticated systems around her. He was about to learn just how wrong he could be. Sarah Chen checked the chronometer on her display. 0347 hours, ship time. The fleet was in the final approach vector to the Kepler colonies, just 6 hours from beginning their devastating assault on 2 million unsuspecting civilians. She had monitored Grix'ton's final briefing to his commanders, watched them finalize their attack formations, and seen the bloodthirsty anticipation in their compound eyes as they prepared for what they considered an easy victory. "Time to disappoint them. Computer," she said quietly to her interface, "execute Operation Turnabout. Authorization, Chen Alpha 77 Delta. Operation Turnabout confirmed. Executing in 3, 2, 1. Across the bridge of the Devastator, every display screen simultaneously flickered and went dark for exactly 3 seconds. When they came back online, the tactical displays showed something that made Navigation Officer Koldesh's blood run cold. "Sir," he reported with barely controlled panic, "we're showing massive system failures across the entire fleet. Ships are falling out of formation, communications are down, and sir, the Annihilator is targeting the Conquest." "What?" Grix'ton roared, spinning toward the tactical display. Sure enough, 2 of his heavy cruisers were maneuvering into attack positions against each other, their weapon systems charging. "Communications," he bellowed. "Get me fleet command frequency now." "Sir, communications are completely scrambled," reported Nowvex frantically. "I'm receiving what appears to be random navigation data on tactical frequencies, weapons protocols on the entertainment channels, and sir, someone is broadcasting human music on the command frequency." Indeed, the bridge speakers were now playing what sounded like an ancient Earth song about not underestimating the quiet ones. The irony was not lost on Commander Zeklar, whose suspicions about their human prisoner were suddenly crystallizing into horrifying certainty. "The human," he breathed, but his words were lost in the chaos erupting around them. "Sir," shouted Weapons Officer Mortrek, "our plasma cannons are offline." "No, wait, they're cycling through diagnostic routines. Sir, they're not responding to our commands." On the main display, the fleet formation was dissolving into complete chaos. Ships were peeling off in random directions, some spinning out of control as their navigation systems fed them contradictory course data. The Devastator itself was beginning to list to starboard as its engines received conflicting thrust commands. "Emergency protocols," Grix'ton commanded. "Switch to manual control and regain formation discipline." "Sir, manual overrides are not responding," reported Chief Engineer Tor Malik. The computer systems are rejecting all direct input commands. That was when every screen in the bridge simultaneously displayed the same image. Dr. Sarah Chen, sitting comfortably in her luxury quarters, no longer looking the least bit confused or helpless. Instead, she wore an expression of cool professional competence that sent chills through every alien officer present. "Good morning, gentlemen," Sarah said, her voice carrying clearly through the bridge speakers. "I hope you don't mind the interruption, but I thought it was time we had a more honest conversation." Grix'ton stared at the screen in stunned disbelief. "This is impossible. She's just an agricultural database specialist." Sarah's laugh was sharp and entirely without humor. "Oh, Warlord Grix'ton, you really should have done your research more carefully. Dr. Sarah Chen, Agricultural Systems Analyst, is indeed my current job title, but before I retired to the peaceful life of cataloging crop yields, I spent 8 years as a cyber warfare specialist with the Colonial Defense Force, specializing in enemy network infiltration and systems disruption." The bridge fell silent except for the sounds of various system alarms and the continued strains of human music from the communication speakers. "You see," Sarah continued conversationally, "when you decided to keep me as your pet and give me unrestricted access to your computer systems, you essentially handed me the keys to your entire fleet. Your AI security protocols are impressive, but they have one fatal flaw. They assume that anyone with legitimate access credentials must be trustworthy." "Impossible," whispered Chief Engineer Tor Malik. "Our quantum encryption is unbreakable." "Your quantum encryption is indeed sophisticated," Sarah acknowledged. "Unfortunately for you, it's managed by AI systems that follow predictable algorithms, and those algorithms can be reverse engineered by someone who knows what to look for. It took me about 36 hours to crack your communication protocols, and another 48 to map your entire network architecture." On the tactical display, the situation was becoming even more chaotic. The Annihilator had opened fire on the Conquest, their plasma beams lighting up space in brilliant flashes. Other ships were frantically trying to restore communications while dealing with their own system failures. "The best part," Sarah said, clearly enjoying herself, "is that you helped me do it. Every time you showed me off to your officers, every technical manual you gave me access to, every maintenance pathway your engineers explained to me, you were providing me with exactly the information I needed to take control of your systems." Grix'ton finally found his voice. "What do you want?" he demanded. "Ransom, safe passage?" "What I want," Sarah replied, her tone turning cold, "is for you to call off your invasion of the Kepler colonies. Right now your fleet is completely under my control. I can shut down your life support, overload your reactors, or simply send you all into the nearest star. The choice is yours." "You wouldn't dare," Grix'ton snarled. "You're bluffing." In response, every light on the bridge dimmed to emergency levels, the artificial gravity fluctuated sickeningly, and the temperature dropped 10 degrees in as many seconds. "Would you like me to demonstrate further?" Sarah asked sweetly. "Perhaps I could show you what happens when I reverse the polarity on your plasma containment fields." Commander Zeklar stepped forward, his voice heavy with defeat. "Sir, recommend immediate compliance with prisoner demands. We have no tactical options remaining." Grix'ton looked around his bridge at the faces of his officers, seeing his own humiliation reflected in their expressions. His supposedly harmless pet had not only compromised his entire invasion force, but had done so while he bragged about her helplessness to anyone who would listen. "You have destroyed my career," he said quietly. "No," Sarah corrected. "You destroyed your career the moment you decided that arrogance was a substitute for competence. I just helped you realize it a little sooner than expected." The bridge speakers crackled as another communication came through on the command frequency, this one from Admiral Colfax aboard the Retribution. "Grix'ton, what is the meaning of this chaos? Why are our ships firing on each other? And why is there human music playing on our tactical networks?" Sarah's image smiled pleasantly from every screen. "Would you like to explain, Warlord, or shall I?" Sarah Chen stood in the shuttle bay of the Devastator, watching as the last of the 17 human prisoners from the Lucky Strike filed aboard the captured alien transport vessel she had commandeered for their escape. The controlled chaos she had orchestrated throughout the fleet was reaching its crescendo, with ships scattered across 3 star systems and their crews desperately trying to regain control of their own technology. "Dr. Chen," said Marcus Webb, the transport captain who had been imprisoned alongside her, "I don't understand how you managed all this. The aliens' technology is supposed to be centuries ahead of ours." Sarah finished her final commands at the shuttle's control console before turning to address the group of rescued colonists. "Advanced technology is only as good as the people using it," she explained. "The Nexar became so dependent on their AI systems that they forgot the fundamental principles of cybersecurity. They built incredibly sophisticated networks with the digital equivalent of screen doors for protection. Through the shuttle's viewport, they could see the Devastator slowly rotating out of control, its navigation systems locked in a feedback loop that would take its engineering crew hours to resolve. In the distance, flashes of weapons fire indicated that several other ships in the fleet were still engaging each other under Sarah's manipulated targeting protocols. The irony," Sarah continued as she initiated the shuttle's launch sequence, "is that their artificial intelligence was actually working perfectly. It followed its programming exactly as designed. The problem was that its programming assumed anyone with valid access credentials could be trusted. Once I gained legitimate access, the AI helped me compromise their entire network." As their shuttle cleared the Devastator's landing bay, Sarah activated the fleet-wide communication system one final time. Her image appeared simultaneously on every functional screen across all 12 ships of Grix'ton's battle group. "Attention officers and crew of the Nexar Empire," she began, her voice carrying the authority of someone who had just demonstrated complete mastery over their technology. "I want you to remember this moment. Remember that your primitive human prisoner not only escaped from your most secure facility, but did so by turning your own advanced systems against you." She paused, letting that sink in before continuing. "You are not the first galactic empire to underestimate humanity, and you probably won't be the last. But I suggest you reconsider your invasion plans for human space. We may not have quantum computers or faster-than-light communication, but we have something your species seems to have forgotten, the ability to think creatively when our backs are against the wall." As their shuttle jumped to hyperspace, Sarah transmitted one final command to the alien fleet. Every ship's computer core received a comprehensive data dump containing detailed schematics of human defensive systems, accurate fleet deployment information, and strategic intelligence about colonial military capabilities. The catch was that 90% of the information was completely fabricated, designed to make human forces appear far more formidable than they actually were. "A little disinformation never hurt anyone," she murmured to herself as she settled back for the journey home. 3 days later, in the emergency session of the Nexar High Command, Warlord Grix'ton stood before a tribunal of his superiors, his career in ruins and his reputation destroyed beyond redemption. The official charges included gross negligence, catastrophic intelligence failure, and the loss of an entire invasion fleet to a single enemy operative. "Explain to this tribunal," demanded Supreme Admiral Thekmore, "how you managed to provide a human spy with administrative access to 12 capital ships." Grix'ton's voice was barely above a whisper. She appeared to be a harmless civilian. Her records indicated she was an agricultural database specialist. I thought she would provide valuable intelligence about human psychology. Instead, continued the Supreme Admiral remorselessly, she provided the humans with complete intelligence about our military capabilities, scattered our fleet across half the galaxy, and demonstrated that our most advanced security systems can be compromised by a single determined operator. Sir, there was no way to predict that a human could possess such technical capabilities. No way to predict. The Supreme Admiral's voice rose dangerously. Commander Zeklar submitted 3 separate reports warning you about the prisoner's suspicious behavior. You ignored all of them. In the back of the tribunal chamber, Zeklar watched his former commander's disgrace with mixed feelings. He had tried to warn Grix'ton, but the Warlord's arrogance had made him deaf to any suggestions that contradicted his preconceived notions about human capabilities. Meanwhile, in human space, Sarah Chen was debriefing Colonial Defense Force intelligence officers about everything she had learned during her week aboard the alien vessel. The technical specifications she had memorized, the network vulnerabilities she had discovered, and the strategic intelligence she had gathered would give humanity a significant advantage in any future encounters with the Nexar Empire. "The most important thing to understand," she told the assembled officers, "is that their greatest strength is also their greatest weakness. They have technology that can do incredible things, but they don't really understand how it works anymore. They've become passengers in their own systems." That evening, alone in his personal quarters aboard a damaged flagship limping back toward Nexar space, former Warlord Grix'ton stared out at the stars and contemplated the magnitude of his failure. He had begun the week as a rising commander in the Empire's military hierarchy, confident in his superiority and certain of his tactical genius. Now he faced court-martial, disgrace, and quite possibly execution for his catastrophic miscalculation. "A harmless agricultural specialist," he said bitterly to his empty quarters. "I called her harmless." The stars offered no reply, but somewhere in the distance human colonies were safe because one determined woman had proven that intelligence and creativity could triumph over technological superiority and arrogant assumptions. And in the files of both species, Dr. Sarah Chen's name would be remembered as the human who hacked an entire alien fleet in under a week, using nothing more than their own overconfidence against them.